It is showtime again. Day 4 ATSV Phase 2 2020. I'd like to invite back to the stage Holli Gibson, who's been with us before. Holli is from Direct to Source. She is a partner. She will be talking today about building sustainability into your brand. Sustainability has been a big focus for ATSV this year. We've had a lot of people talk about the different aspects of it. So this is a great one for anybody who is starting out that's looking to build their sustainability into their business or existing companies as well. I'd like to remind everybody that we do have a chat function. So if you have any questions that arise throughout Holli's presentation, please include them in the chat, as well as our Facebook Live viewers there. Please post your questions there and we'll address them at the end. So Holli, it's good to see you. Welcome.
Good to see you too. Thank you. I am going to share my screen here. Let's see. All right. So I want to start out by asking you a question. What is sustainability to you? Does it mean you're organic? Does it mean you're using recycled fibers in your apparel? What about ethical production? Is that something that's part of sustainability for you? Using less plastic, maybe not putting everything in plastic bags or on plastic hangers. Does it mean you have a smaller carbon footprint for your brand? You're not producing so much that a bunch of it ends up thrown away in a landfill or you have to dump it somewhere? Can you even be a 100% sustainable brand? These are some of the questions we're going to look at today. And these options, we want to look at the options that will make you better and more sustainable, okay? My goal is that you're going to come away from this empowered to make better choices and understand that this path is a journey that a brand of any size can join. So this is me. I'm an avid scuba diver. I love the outdoors. This has really reinforced my belief that we should be responsible stewards of the planet. I've been in this business for about 30 years, spent the last 14 working on sustainable brands. I actually started out on the design side. I began my career as a pattern maker, and then I was a designer and then heading up teams of designers. And I crossed over to the dark side, and I've been working full-time on the production side for about the past dozen years or so. I've worked in really big companies. I've worked in startups. I've run production domestically in the US and in probably a dozen countries around the globe. I'm really passionate about helping brands grow. And I serve on the vice chairman of the board for the Denver Design Incubator, which is a nonprofit that I helped found just over 10 years ago in Colorado that supports the apparel industry and emerging brands. This is my partner, Tulio. He's got a real passion for helping change people's lives. His dream is to leave an impact on people for the better. We first crossed paths about 25 years ago. We were both working for the same brand. I was a designer, he was country manager. And he is the guy that specializes in making things happen. He focuses on quality and he really inspires the team of folks in the factory every day that make all of our apparel. Our mission at Direct to Source is to impact people's lives by making apparel that people and the planet can feel good about. We did this by creating a company with a triple bottom line. So in addition to profits, we focus on people and planet, and that's the core of our business. Here's what I'm not going to do today. I'm not going to spout a ton of industry buzzwords and throw certifications and acronyms at you. I'm not going to tell you that you have to join all of the organizations. I'm not going to tell you have to redesign your entire collection to be 100% organic or 100% recycled. Right? You're having success because your customers already like what you're doing. They like the products you're making. I don't want you to change everything. I just want you to start by making a decision. Decide to be better. This industry really doesn't have a good sustainability record, right? Textile mills have been responsible for pollution. Sewing factories have a track record of human rights issues across the world. Throwaway nature of fashion has really filled up our landfills. The journey to be a more sustainable brand is just that, it's a journey. It's not a sprint. There is no finish line. Even Patagonia, which is widely recognized as one of the most sustainable brands, they realize that they have a long way to go on this journey. But there's steam building to turn this industry around. And what an exciting time this is. Don't you want to be a part of it? And it all just starts with that decision and then followed up by an action to make your brand better. And once you start, Don't stop, just keep going. Here's what you're not going to do. Greenwashing, right? Consumers are really becoming aware when brands are simply greenwashing and not providing transparency. And most consumers really do appreciate transparency and honesty, even if what you're doing isn't considered perfect yet, right? And answering one of those early questions, it's really impossible to be a 100% sustainable brand. I mean, our industry exists to sell a lot of products. So on some level, we're inherently at odds with a certain level of sustainability. So aim to be a better brand, a responsible brand. Be honest with with your customers about where you are on your journey. And you know what that gives you? It gives you an unfolding story to talk about with your customers. As you go on that journey and meet new milestones, it gives you a conversation with your customers and lets them be part of your journey too. And that really builds your tribe. So the whole subject of sustainability really can be a bit overwhelming, right? So for brands like Patagonia, it's built into their DNA. For others like Guess, right, that's a fashion brand. That was not built into their DNA recently. So they're just sort of racing to catch up. They've started a multi-year plan to even educate and ask questions and start to learn about the science before they actually start implementation. So everybody's coming at this from a different place and a slightly different perspective, and they're all starting in different places as well. So while it's good to talk about what the big brands are doing, a lot of it doesn't really apply when you're a smaller mid-sized brand. But let's talk about how the bigger brands are tackling this subject of sustainability for just a minute. So many big brands will have sustainability officers, perhaps entire departments that are just focused on the different aspects of sustainability, along with the science behind it. Right? Patagonia has an R&D lab that just works to make their existing products more sustainable. Big brands are going to join big, expensive organizations, Textile Exchange, Sustainable Apparel Coalition. They're going to go to the big conferences. And this is where they are talking about big sustainability issues in the industry and with government agencies and nonprofits and NGOs. This is all great. This is what is leading the spirit of sustainability. But big brands have big orders, which means they have leverage, right? They have leverage with the fabric mills. They have leverage with the factories. Big brands have folks whose entire job is to make sure that all of their vendors are in compliance. Small brands don't have that so much. So what can you do as a small or a mid-sized brand who is interested in making more sustainable products and a more sustainable company, right? You might not have all the knowledge necessary. It can be really expensive to travel to all those conferences. You might just be trying to find a factory that'll give you quality work and on-time delivery. So what can you do? I said before that you first just need to make a decision to be better. It starts with awareness. I'm a firm believer that knowing is better than not knowing. So what are some options that you have right now at your fingertips? Are you recycling in your office or are you throwing everything away? Do you turn out the lights when you leave the room? Or do you leave them on like my kids do every time they leave that room? What about your packaging? How are you packaging and shipping your apparel? What about your carbon footprint? Where is your product made and where are your customers located? So you'll see here the things I'm talking about are really common sense. You don't need a science degree to understand sustainability, no matter what anybody else has led you to believe. You can start with things that you already know. And you'll notice here, right, I'm talking about sustainability holistically. Not just are you using recycled or organic fabrics. So be aware and do a self-assessment. And you can pretty quickly pick off some low-hanging fruit to make your company more sustainable in really pain-free ways. So let's say you've done your self-assessment. You've become aware of what you're doing that's better and what you're doing that might not be so great. That's a huge first step. So stop and pat yourself on the back. Now you know what you can do to improve your sustainability in some pretty pain-free ways. Bring in a recycling bin. Don't stop there. Now you can start looking at some of the things that are harder and frankly more costly. If you know that your fabric isn't sustainable, look around and see if there's some better choices that are going to work for you from availability, pricing, and performance standards. If you don't know if your factory has ethical treatment of workers, ask them some questions. If you don't like their answers or if they don't answer, well, now you've learned something. Based upon where you are, tackle these projects one at a time. If you don't like the answers from your factory, maybe it's time to start talking to others. If you're using virgin polyester, maybe you can find a fabric that's going to work for you really well that still has polyester, but now it's recycled polyester. Maybe changing your packaging is an easier place to start. There's no right or wrong place to start, just start on the journey. Technology is a big one, right? This is really what's helping innovate sustainable solutions for today and for the future. Now, it may not be practical or prudent to convert everything you're making today to sustainable, but as technologies continue to evolve, you're going to have more and more options that are much more easily to access. So 14 years ago, I started on this journey, right? We had recycled polyester back then. It was really expensive. Quality was horrible. Nobody really wanted it, but it was available. But fast forward to today, you tell people that this shirt here is made of recycled plastic water bottles, they can't believe it. It's so soft. So just stay aware. Technology is going to make sustainability easier for whatever your product is as time passes. This was just announced recently. Spinova is brand new. Oops, I went too fast. Spinova is a brand new fiber that was just announced on the market. So they've developed a way to turn wood pulp into fabric without all the chemicals, right? So we have bamboo, we have modal, but it takes a lot of chemicals to make those into fabric. This is a brand new one, so that's pretty exciting. Recycled spandex is another innovation. It's technically actually been around for quite a while. It was first launched in 2014, but it still hasn't been widely adapted. Cost, availability, production availability, and capacity. But as things evolve and as the technology continues to evolve, this is the focus of big brands, big manufacturers. So keep your eyes and ears open because it will be coming. And once it's out on the market more readily, you will have access to it. Fabrics. There's a lot of choices for better, more sustainable fabrics today. So how do you make sense of it? How do you choose what you're going to use? Well, let me give you a suggestion here. What fits best with your brand's DNA? It's a bit easier if you picked your mindset first. What's the most important in the realm of sustainability to your product and your brand? And it's different for every brand. Let me give you an example here. Brand A. Brand A's mindset is all about recycling. It is their keystone to sustainability. They use recycled boxes to ship everything. They try to have a zero waste office with recycling and composting bins. So it totally makes sense for them that all of their products are recycled as well. They sell t-shirts made from recycled polyester blended with recycled cotton. Their customers love these shirts because they are passionate about recycling too. What about brand B? They have a different mindset and a different DNA. Their DNA revolves around the products being seasonless and having a long lifespan. That's their keystone to sustainability. Should they make a recycled polyester and recycled cotton t-shirt? Cotton's a short staple fiber. Recycled cotton is an even shorter staple fiber. What does that mean? It pills. It's okay for brand A. Their brand DNA is all about recycled, right? It's their badge of honor. The little pills on a shirt are not going to be perceived as a quality issue by their customers. But it doesn't really work for brand B, right? They have a mindset of long lifespan, and their customers are going to perceive pilling after a few wears as a quality issue. And you know what? 3 wears and into the landfill isn't holistically sustainable anyways, right? So how might brand B build a better, more sustainable shirt than their old virgin polyester regular cotton shirt? But keeping with their mindset, the longevity is the most important. Well, they've got options. They might switch to an all cotton shirt, which is compostable. They might switch to organic cotton. They might go to recycled polyester. Any of these choices, or a combination of them, will give them a better, more sustainable shirt with a long lifespan. So you see, you have choices. And the right choice for brand A might be very different than the choice for brand B or C or Z. Now let's talk about the sewing factory. Here is where we really get into the realm of social sustainability. Right? If you're a big brand, you have a team that audits your factories, you have folks in the factory all the time, you really do get a good sense of what they're doing and how they're doing it. But if you're a small brand, do you know who your factory is? Who's sewing your product? Do they sew it or do they outsource it to another factory that you don't even know about? Knowing is better than not knowing. I said that before, and I'm a firm believer in that. Your goal here is to make progress to getting better. It's not necessarily about being perfect today. This is a journey, remember? So when Tulio and I decided to build direct to source, we decided to look at everything that we knew about production, the way we've been doing things for 30 years, both on the brand side and on the production side. We decided to turn everything on its head and see if we could figure out a better way to do it. A lot of our industry colleagues, I got to tell you, kind of thought we were crazy. They're like, you guys are going to fail. You're going to spend all your money. But Tulio and I really had a faith built from a lot of years of experience and a lot of passion about the subject. The First thing we did was to get rid of the big bulletin board that hangs in the entrance of many factories. Workers show up on Monday morning. If their name's on the board, they have work that week. Great, they can sit down and sew. And if not, they have to travel next door or go down the street and see if anybody else has a job. And if not, they just go home and don't work. I mean, how can you have any family stability without any job stability at all? We didn't set up traditional factory lines where every operator is trained in only one operation. The left sleeve person sews the left sleeve on all day, every week, every month. And if the right sleeve person is absent, the left sleeve person can't go switch because they don't know how to sew in a right sleeve. We set up a flexible modular system based upon the Toyota sewing system in our factory. It gives us a lot of flexibility. It did require a lot of training, even though we have really expensive sewers. But what happened is our team can sew a lot of different kinds of products now in regular lines and smaller lines. And they can sew t-shirts, they can sew hoodies, they can sew dress shirts, they can sew men's dress pants with welt pockets. So it gave us a lot of flexibility, which we are really a small factory, so we needed. This system allows us to also take really traditional size orders and string everything together in a regular sewing line, or break everybody up into smaller modules and produce smaller orders and still be productive doing that. We're committed to our employees and they've really become a part of our family. And here is the really interesting thing that happened from all of this approach. Our team feels valued. Our sewers really take pride in their work and they take ownership of quality in what they're doing. Because they feel valued, we really have hardly any turnover. And that team really knows each other now, right? So this led to really skyrocketing productivity. So now we don't work the standard 6-day work week that most factories in Central America work. We only work 5 days a week. And everybody else is spending more time with their families. We have some people pursuing and further education and going to university on the weekends. And you know what? Our colleagues who thought we were crazy, we've had several of them come back and go, hey, we've been hearing about what you're doing. Will you show us? Can we see? And we've even had a couple people who are setting up and trying to do some similar things to what we're doing. And that just makes us really happy because we feel really blessed to be a positive influence in the industry that we love and have spent our entire careers in. But you know what? We're just like you. We're always looking to see what we can do better. I got a dirty secret to tell you. Right now, all of our cutting scraps go to the landfill, right? And we talked about how bad that was before. And we're contributing to landfills. We originally were going to put in a biomass system to incinerate the scraps so they didn't go into the landfill, and then also help power the factory so we didn't have to use as much electricity. But after we kind of started looking at it holistically, we realized that the air pollution was going to be a worse issue by doing that. So right now, the scraps go to the landfill, but we're planning to bring in this giant fabric shredding system where we shred all the scraps and it comes out and it makes these mats or blankets, and we can sew the edges, and we're going to partner with some nonprofits to donate those to people in need. So we're not there yet, right? But we're on the journey. So let's talk about some more details about your products and how you can make them more sustainable. Packaging is a big one, right? It's standard in this business to wrap every individual garment in single-use plastic. This is really often a place where you can start reducing easily. Unless our customers require otherwise, we ship all the product in a carton with one plastic bag. Now we need that one bag for the moisture barrier to protect the goods, but we don't need it on every single bag. So we're using one instead of 48 or 72 in a carton, right? And I'll tell you an interesting story about a sustainable brand I was working with about 10 years ago, right? So this is still pretty fairly early in the sustainability journey. They decided to remove all the individual plastic bags, and they actually shipped the way we do. And they even put a note on there explaining to their customer why they were doing it. And they were an eco-friendly brand, like that was their thing, right? And they were working with a big retailer, and they were puzzled. They got a call and they said, we want to return everything. It's all second quality goods. And they were like really worried, right? So they're like, oh, of course, yeah, send it back. So their QC team poured through it and they're like, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, this is first quality merchandise. So they did a test. They went and got a bunch of little plastic bags, repacked exactly the same garments in individual plastic bags, resent them to the retailer, and the retailer was great. Thanks for replacing the defective goods. That should get you thinking about plastic. Carbon footprint, right? This is another big one. So people's knee-jerk reaction to this is, let's make everything in the USA. Totally great idea, right? But it's really not realistic for all products. Nearshore, Central America, Mexico, Canada, right? Those can be great places because they're near us. They can be great places in the US to reduce your carbon footprint. And I'm not advocating here that we get entirely away from Asia. We don't necessarily want to, and for some things we can't. But if you think about your carbon footprint more holistically, this gives you some better options. So I'll give you another example here. I know a ski brand in Denver, great brand. They make fantastic stuff, Fly Low. And they make all of their ski stuff in China, right? There's nowhere else in the world that they can get the quality and the performance gear for that price that they need for their high performing products. But they started introducing more lifestyle stuff, t-shirts and flannel shirts and other casual shirts. And they said, looking at their footprint holistically, do we need to make all of that product in China? And they decided that they could make those products just as well in Central America, have great quality, great price on those. And so now they have a blended footprint because they look at it holistically. So overall as a company, their carbon footprint is lower than if they made every product in Asia. Overproduction is another big one. So when I started in this business 30 years ago, we really did make most of our stuff in the US, and we didn't even have outlet malls, right? You would get an order from a retailer, you would produce to what they ordered, and then production started to go offshore, right? Because of different labor prices. And then that's where we got into really high minimums, really long lead times. And so brands had to start habitually overproducing, because if Macy's called you and wanted a reorder of something, there's no way you could get it from overseas, right, in time. So brands had extra product. So where'd the extra product go that wasn't bought? We built outlet malls to stick it in. But there are ways to do production differently, right? We've developed a program with some of our customers that allows for more just-in-time production. We keep some fabric in stock for them. We keep some trims in stock. We work on numbers together. We are ordering monthly or every other month instead of 5 big seasons a year. And it's a win-win for everybody, right? We're a sewing factory and everybody's an employee. So if we can sew continually, then we overall are in better shape because we don't have giant seasons where we have to staff up and then lay everybody off. And our customer gets product shipments more regularly. They're smaller shipments, it means they have a smaller warehouse. And they're able to respond to what their customers are asking for if all of a sudden blue is the big color or they sold out of mediums. Next month, we just produce more of those. So it's a win-win. The $64 million question, does it cost more? I mean, the short answer is yeah, it does. But it's important, right? It's important to our industry. It's important to our customers. It's important to the people that sew the clothing and the people that grow the cotton. It's important to our planet. Remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Just take baby steps to start. Just keep going. We started out making one of our base fabrics with recycled polyester, and we had standard cotton. Over time, we've been able to switch that to BCI cotton, which is the Better Cotton Initiative, which is better. And it only costs 15 cents a garment more for our customers. So not a big deal, right? They could totally absorb that. And why didn't we go to organic, you might say? Because they couldn't absorb that price. It was a lot higher. That was a good choice to make things better. So I think if you look at everything with the heart, the right kind of heart, right? You'll make the right decisions. Every business has to be profitable to survive, even sustainable ones. And if you just look at everything critically and come at it from the right place, you'll continue to make better decisions. You'll become more sustainable over time. So you are a sustainable brand and you're becoming a sustainable brand at the same time. So I appreciate everybody listening, and I'm going to turn off my screen share. And
Okay. Thank you, Holly. I love seeing it's so interesting. And I love how you opened with, what is sustainability to you? There's so many angles and so many ways you could be sustainable. I think most people's minds go to, fair labor and, the environment and stuff like that. But there's so many ways, there's so many types of sustainability and ways to tackle it. It's good to be aware of those things and see, and it really is just that, the baby steps part, it's like just get started with one thing and over time you can incrementally add steps to it. So let me check our
that's one of the big blockers from people trying to figure out, because it's such a big subject. Yeah. And it's so overwhelming. And so you just kind of get verklempt and don't know where to go. And so you just shut down. And my goal is to show people that you don't have to do it all today, right? It can be easy. Just start little and start with what you know. And, if we're all on this journey together as an industry, wow, that's going to be a huge difference in this world.
Absolutely. Would you say that, and I know sustainability has been ramping, the topic of it, the approaches to it, the practical application of different ways to move towards sustainability for companies is really started to ramp up over the last few years, I feel. Would you say that now more than ever, and it will continue this way, hopefully, is that it's actually not just from a material standpoint, but there's actually incentives here for long-term sustainability of actual companies on a financial economic aspect. Would you say that it's going that direction?
I absolutely think it's going that direction. I mean, when I started in the business so many years ago, focusing on that, people are like, oh, that's nice to have, but they didn't understand about paying for it, right? And and it was very, very much more expensive then. And so, its prices have come down as popularity and availability and throughput have gone up. And companies now are looking at ways how more and more ways to be sustainable and ethical. And I think this, we've seen it ramping up for the past couple years, but I think the lockdowns, in all honesty, people had a lot of time to sit home and think, and brands are having to rethink about going direct to consumer much more so. And so that opens the conversation, and consumers are really interested in it, but they, some brands have not done a good job at sort of saying, here's what we're doing. And now with this more direct approach, there's more access to the consumer, so brands could talk about what they're doing. And there had been early on some brands who said, hey, here's what we're doing for sustainability. And then somebody would find out, well, but you're not doing this, right? And then that was a big roadblock because brands didn't want to put something out there and then get dinged for it, right? And my point is, be transparent. I told you all our scraps go in the landfill, right? But just be transparent, and then, work towards better. And that makes it easier because there's no gotcha, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what's interesting is, there's quite a bit of companies that have sustainability initiatives in place, or ones that they're planning on and putting into their business model, but they don't educate their consumer base about it. Would you say that the different sustainability initiatives, whether it's your factories RAP certified or you utilize Ecotex certifications or anything like that, do you think these practices are powerful marketing tools, especially if your consumer base is cognizant about the environment and these various issues?
I do think certifications are good marketing tools. There are some challenges. I mean, they're really expensive, right, to get.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. There's also the challenge of consumer education. So a lot of consumers don't know RAP, and we're actually, heading towards RAP certification now because we feel that that's important. But a lot of consumers have no idea what that means. So there's a lot of really good things, but again, it's the process. And there's even brands out there who have sustainability initiatives that they don't talk about. I'll tell you, Ford trucks. Do you know that if you get a Ford truck within the last few years and you get cloth seats, their seats are made out of recycled polyester?
Didn't know that.
They don't even advertise it, but they are, right? Yeah. So there's a lot out there, and there's a lot more than I think generally we're aware of. And that's a good thing, because that, like I said, it's a lot of people, both big and small, banding together to make the right decisions that are going to be really impactful on our world.
Yeah, it's interesting. The service providers like yourself, and that are pushing sustainability, they do the best they can to market to the general public, the general consumer base. But ultimately, I've heard a lot of experts talk about this, is that the onus needs to be on the brands to educate the general public, because it is an increasing in popularity. The buzzword is no longer a buzzword. It's becoming in the forefront of the consumer consciousness. So, it'll be interesting to see how brands continue to adopt this policy of educating their customers moving forward. So, but yeah, thank you so much for all the details and all the information. Could you please put on the last slide you had up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jamal is asking to see it one more time.
Maybe. Yeah. No, I don't have a share screen anymore. Oh, there it is. Sorry.
Yeah, it's on the bottom of the screen.
Technical difficulties.
I'm telling you, sometimes that bar disappears.
Here we go. Yeah, so we have offices in Colorado. Our factory is in Guatemala. We're just outside of the city there. My partner is in Guatemala all the time, so he's in the factory every day. It was kind of interesting. When we started the business, we were renting this tiny place that was just jam crowded. We were so packed in there. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't really designed to be a factory. And we were kind of testing out our theories, right? And we didn't want to rent a giant place if we didn't know if our system was going to work. We were convinced it was going to work, but we started very small and proved that out. And so once we were very comfortable with it, then we actually got so lucky. So our landlord knew we were going to go look for a bigger factory because we didn't have enough room. And he said, you know, I love you guys being here. I love what you're doing in the community, because we're in a really small town. So we created a lot of jobs in this community. And he said, can I build you a new building? And so we were like,
Oh.
yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
Like, I know. And we were like, okay, here's
Yeah.
the wrap specifications for a building. Will you build it to these codes? And
Oh,
he's like,
wow.
that's the problem.
That's amazing. It's like a custom wrap certified built.
It is. Yeah. So as soon as the borders open up, we'll be having our final inspection, or our initial inspections. We had our unofficial pre-inspection, but we'll be having the real process once the borders start opening back up again.
That's amazing. We just had Marsha Dixon from Better Buying Inc. talking about how sustainability could also extend to your relationship with your partners and your suppliers. And this is a great example of how, you know, you were able to essentially create a custom built wrap certified factory from the ground up, just because you leverage the relationship with your landlord.
Absolutely.
So there's so many different ways to accomplish this. You just got to think outside the box. And direct to source, great resource for everybody who wants to figure out how to get started. These baby steps that Holly's been talking about. We do have one more question here. Does direct to source have low minimum orders?
We do have low minimum orders, but I will say low is a different number to every people. So we just work really transparently. So once we get below about 300 units of something, we're just not productive anymore. We do have a blank sustainable t-shirt line for brands who, you know, want to buy 50 or 100 of something. But we, you know, as we become more productive, the pricing gets better, right? Because sewing is a large part of the cost of any garment. And so we're real transparent with customers who come to us and say, hey, I want to make this. I only want to make 500. And we're like, great, here's going to be your price on 500. And once you get bigger, then you're going to have these savings. As we become more efficient, your price is going to go down. So we really try to help everybody make decisions from a place of knowledge. Yeah. I know that's not real common in this industry. This industry kind of likes to traditionally be behind closed doors, but I think transparency is the key. And that's really what drives sustainability and partnerships in the supply chain, is just being transparent with each other. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. Here's why. How can we make this work for everybody?
I think you're seeing the landscape change slowly but surely towards a more collaborative environment. You know, and you're right about the fashion industry being one of those where people tend to hold their cards close to the chest, but you know, hopefully over time, especially with technology, and you know, it's something that's continuing down the right road, I think.
Well, and it's escalating. I mean, the changes, you know, we were changing so slowly, and it just in the recent years, technology and, you know, so many reasons for that, but it is an exciting time to be in this industry for sure.
Yeah. Well, very excited to see what happens here in the near future. Holly, it's good to see you again. I would like to remind everyone that we do have for those of you who have not been in yet, the virtual dashboard. I just posted a link down there. And I've got one more question here. I think manufacturers still need to help small companies or startups to assist small orders in the range of 10 to 50 units. Is that possible for manufacturers?
It's really challenging for manufacturers because of the way we're set up, right? So we don't pay piece rate, right? We pay hourly. So when we have to break down to make a couple of pieces, we're paying a lot of people to sit there and not do anything. So I'll just tell you a quick story. So in the old days, when I started in this business, we actually had our own sample rooms in our company, right? So you have a sample room with a bunch of professional sewers, you've had all the industrial equipment, and we'd make the samples, and we'd make the salesman samples. So when it was time to go to market, those sewers would sit down and knock out 20 of a style, 50 of a style, 10 of a style, whatever needed to go to market. And I think there is some push with some domestic folks in the US they're saying it's production, but really for people who are in production, 10 units, several dozen units, that's samples to us. So I think there's some people, I've heard of some people setting up some of these they're calling them small production facilities, but it's really the old style sample room where you've got the right equipment, you've got the
Microfactories.
sewers. Yeah, they are. They are micro factories. And so I think there's finally starting to be some people to address that. It's quite expensive to do it that way, but it can still be a really smart idea for brands just starting out. Because do you really want to make 500 of something if you don't know if you can sell 10, right? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So, that's a unique struggle because it's hard to do that at an effective cost. But there are people working on it for sure.
And you think are there other ways for people just getting started to maybe different strategies on how they structure their business, on how to be able to work with some of these larger manufacturers? I think a good example would be, let's say you're starting your line with 5 to 10 different SKUs. A good example of a different route would be maybe start out with one SKU. And
Exactly.
that way you can reach their minimums and you can test out your products a little more thoroughly. And especially with liquidations in different secondary markets, there's a lot, just because you purchase a large amount of something doesn't mean you necessarily can't sell it, even if it's not through.
I look at all this holistically, right? So your budget is a factor. Your marketing is a huge factor, right? If you say, I'm going to go buy 500 of something and I haven't built my Instagram following yet, probably doing things in the wrong order, right? So it's a risk assessment of how much can you sell versus how much do you have to produce. And I mentioned the Denver Design Incubator earlier, right? We're dealing with young brands and designers, startup designers, on those subjects all the time. And many of them have said, okay, I'm going to learn to sew. Right? Maybe you're going to sew the first 10 yourself. Maybe you hire a local sample sewer, right? And you're going to pay a lot of money to do it. But at this point, your business isn't going to be profitable anyways, right? Most businesses aren't profitable for at least 3 to 5 years. So if you're really just a startup, this is an investment in your business. You're perfecting your styles, you're perfecting your fit, you're testing the market to seeing if people like it. Because you know what, if you make 10 styles and you're brand new, you put 10 styles out there, what are the odds that all 10 styles are going to be snapped up by people loving them? It's not good, right? They're going to love some of them, yes, but some of them aren't going to turn out quite right. And so you've made 10 pieces of those, a dozen of those. So who cares, right? That was just a little investment in your education. These pieces that sold really well, now you can go to a factory with confidence and say, hey, these 4 pieces, I feel confident making 300 of, or 500 of, or 700 of. So, it's difficult to be on the micro end. It really is. And it's expensive, but that just needs to be part of your budgeting for your business plan because you're proving out your concept.
Yeah, that's a great point about proving your concept. I remember, especially after school, fashion school out in LA, a lot of students were eager to get their line started, and they didn't, they created some beautiful pieces, but they didn't properly set up their supply chain. So they spent all this money on samples and didn't find people locally at this point because they couldn't do overseas with the low minimums. And they spent all this time, energy, and money essentially building these beautiful lines, and there was no manufacturers to produce them. So if you did get a big order from a reseller, well, now you're kind of dead in the water, So that's another example of
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say, as you're talking to factories, be honest. Say, I'm not ready for a factory, right? I'm just trying to meet people and figure out what is my chain going to be, when I'm ready to go to a factory. And you know what? We appreciate that too. Right. Because I don't want to spend, hours. I love to spend time with people, but we've got to be working on things that are going to ultimately fill the factory. So while we're happy to make connections and we love connecting with people that aren't ready and saying, hey, here's what we do, here's some things to think about. I know some designers go into this approach with the factory, like, I'm going to make all these pieces and I'm going to do all these numbers when they know they're not. And just be honest with them, right? Just go, hey, I'm not there yet, but I'm working to get there. What do I need to know to come work with you? And factories will absolutely give you, enough time to talk through that with you and start building that relationship for the future.
Yeah, it's good to have them in your back pocket. Even if you already have somebody you're working with, have a secondary or tertiary backup.
Absolutely.
Who knows what can happen, and you miss one order and you're out of business sometimes.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I had one more question come in. Do you work with any antimicrobial fabrics?
We do. Yeah. We probably make about 70 or 80% of the fabrics that we cut and sew. Antimicrobial is an additive that can be added at the end. We do have a lot of in-stock fabrics. I don't think any of ours at the moment have antimicrobial. So to make a fabric, you're kind of looking at some bigger numbers depending on the fabric. It's anywhere from 6 to 20,000 yards. So antimicrobial is added in the production stage. You obviously can purchase fabrics out on the market that have antimicrobial as well. There are a lot of different kinds of antimicrobial. There are some with silver. There are some, that are more of a chemical base, and different degrees of sustainability along with those. But you kind of have to balance, when you're talking about that kind of product, you have to balance performance and story to get the right product for you.
I heard a really cool idea for an antimicrobial product. If you think about doctors, and especially in this world, that wear neckties, and that's pretty much the only thing they have exposed because they have their lab coats on. I had a student one time 8 years ago pitch an idea for an antimicrobial tie directly targeted towards medical professionals. So I thought
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So anybody out listening, take the idea, run with it, make it work. I think this is a good time to get started in that niche.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, great. All right. I don't think we have any more questions here. Let me check our Facebook feed. We do not. Okay. Holli, so good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As always. And hopefully, again, get to see you in person at some point.
Yes, that'll be nice. And we're all back in person.
Hang on one second. We had... Jason, my Wi-Fi went out for a second and missed what you said about new designers who have a nice line but it cannot sell. Oh, so I'm just reading the rest here. Yeah, so basically I was describing about how some new designers can get carried away in their designs. Just talking based on what Holli was saying about doing things in the correct order. It's important to find out from a production standpoint, because a sample maker might be able to make whatever you can throw at them, but being able to translate that into a product that can be made cost effectively in bulk quantities, even if you're just producing 100 units for a line. I remember when I was in school, I had a number of students that were my friends that went out on their own right away, and they designed this big line and got all these samples made, and then they got an order, and now I have to find the supplier. So it's important to find out especially if you're gonna produce domestically, the options aren't as varied. So make sure you have your supply chain set up and your logistics and all that, and make sure your manufacturers can actually produce what you designed. So that's just what I was talking about there. I think one of the common pitfalls, and you don't know what you don't know when you're starting out. So stand on the shoulders of giants like Holli here, who can help you out in the beginning. And everybody watching, please take a screenshot of Holli's information here so you can reach out and find out some more information. So, okay, that will wrap up our session. Holli, it's good to see you. Stay safe.
You too.
And I look forward to hearing your next presentation at some point in the future. Take care.
Thanks so much.